Now moving towards the message for today. Today is the last part of our This Is Us series. And today, Johanna Kelly, our pastor of Celebrate Recovery, is going to be sharing her story. And I'm telling you, you're going to be glad you showed up today or glad that you tuned in online. So first off, as I said, Johanna is the pastor of Celebrate Recovery. And if you're like me, when I first came to Lakeside, you have no idea what Celebrate Recovery is, let alone what a Celebrate Recovery pastor does. So first thing, Celebrate Recovery, or often called CR for short, is a Christian recovery-based 12-step program. In some ways, often the simplest comparison is made to AA, and that's a good kind of handhold for those who have no idea what it's like to get their heads around CR. We love AA, and that's good, but also CR is much broader. So while it does include substance abuse, there's also so much more that people go to CR for. In fact, only 1 in 3 people who attend CR are there for substance issues. So we like to say it's a Christian recovery program based on the Beatitudes of Jesus, offering healing from any hurts, hang-ups, or addictive habits. Basically, any area of your life where you feel stuck, CR is a great option. And as you listen to Johanna's story today, you'll see how broad and far-reaching the healing Celebrate Recovery can bring. What does it look like for those who are like, so what exactly does this ministry look like? Celebrate Recovery meets here at Lakeside every Monday night at 7 p.m. Super easily placed to come out for the first time. They do large group first where there's a welcome, singing, and someone shares their story, much like Johanna is going to share today, or there's a teaching. And after that, there's open share small groups, or if you're there for the first time, there's a newcomer group every week to help you get oriented. So there's no need to pre-book. You can just show up as a newcomer. And at the end, there's time of connection in the cafe. And you can come for 1, 2, or all of those elements, or you could just pop in and pop back out. That's totally fine. So that's Celebrate Recovery. And as the pastor of Celebrate Recovery, Johanna Kelly oversees everything CR related. If you'd like more info, you can talk to her after. And there's also information pamphlets at the back that you're welcome to grab. Now let's talk about Johanna. I've known Johanna since I came to Lakeside 5 years ago. And from the moment that I met her, I knew she was someone who didn't live life with a facade. She lives life authentically, transparently, and passionately. Today, you'll experience why so many people find Johanna such an incredible pastor to journey through life's hardest challenges with. And if you haven't known Johanna well up into this point, today, after today, you will realize through this story and her passion why I think we're so blessed to have her here in our church family. I feel personally privileged to know her and to get to work alongside her. So friends, would you join me in welcoming Johanna Kelly?
Thanks. All right. Make sure the computer is working. Good morning, friends. Thank you, Mark, for the introduction this morning. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to share my story with all of you here today. I've spoken in a few different settings before and shared my story before, but I've never actually had the honor of sharing it here with my Lakeside family. And so this is an exciting time for me. I'd like to start off with what we do at Celebrate Recovery. Every time someone gets up, whether on a stage or in one of our open share small groups, we do something called a CR introduction. And so I want to start there. My name is Johanna, and I'm a grateful follower of Jesus. And I'm in recovery, seeking healing and freedom from the effects of emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. Hi. Awesome. So I first came to this church, to Lakeside, in 2005. And this has been my primary church family throughout my walk in life and in faith. I grew up in a small town called Simcoe here in Ontario. It's just south of Guelph. And I say that I grew up in what I call a quasi-Christian home. My parents were influenced by the Jesus movement in the 1960s and 70s, and I have some memories of attending Sunday school as a child. I was baptized at the age of 8, but really I was motivated to be baptized because my older sister was being baptized, and I just thought she was the world. I think my parents did well trying to balance exposing us to Christianity and Jesus, but not necessarily the rules and sometimes the dogma of institutional religion. The Holy Spirit was a primary focus. I personally always knew on a soul level that there was a God. And whether this was just me and my personality or the influence of my parents or maybe a combination of both, God was real to me from a very young age. And I know that my parents sought wholeheartedly, to the best of their ability, to draw us as a family into a life of faith and love. But like most, if not all families, we were imperfect. And my parents had their own undealt with pain and trauma from their life that impacted me as a young girl. You see, home was dysfunctional. Rage, fighting, conflict were a common reality. And often this resulted in emotional and even physical abuse. Often I experienced my home as a loud, opinionated, sarcastic, and sometimes even dangerous place to be. The roots of my identity were beginning to grow under the soil of my life, roots that would define me for years to come and influence how I saw myself, how I saw God, and how I saw the world around me. I'm the third of 4 children. And if you know me at all, I am kind of a low-key, down-to-earth, reflective sort. And so I often felt unseen and unheard in my family. I really felt invisible. At the age of 5 was my first encounter of sexual abuse. And the root of shame that had already begun to grow in me and shape my identity only deepened, and I felt defective. That there was something deeply wrong with Johanna. Age 7, my parents began the process of a legal separation and eventual divorce. I was the child now of a single mom visiting my father on weekends. My mom was determined to make something of her life, and so she returned to school and to work in order to provide for our family. But during the week, myself and my siblings were often left at home to be cared for by babysitters or to fend for ourselves. And life felt chaotic. It was also during these years that I was again the victim of childhood sexual abuse on several more occasions. And I felt abandoned, and I felt alone. As most children in the West are, I was in school, and I struggled with high insecurity, focus, and I had a lot of fear and apprehension. I was diagnosed at this time with something called an auditory processing disorder, and I later discovered in trauma therapy that what I was actually struggling with was post-traumatic stress disorder. And this is where the belief that I'm stupid took root. You see, I believed that the reality was, it just was, that I was intrinsically unworthy and unlovable. So I ended up moving to Guelph with my younger sister and my mother when I was 12 years old. And I was quickly accepted by a group of peers who brought me into their circle. And gosh, did I ever long to be accepted, seen, and loved. And there began my downward spiral into sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I was 13 years old. I began using alcohol, marijuana, cigarettes, and having sex. And these things became my identity. They were the things that made me cool, that made me accepted, that made me feel loved and worthy. And they also quieted the shame and the pain and were the perfect distraction from myself. 14, I met a boy, I dropped out of high school, and I left home. I moved into a local motel here in Guelph, and I eventually found myself living in Montreal. I lived in Montreal for about 6 months. I don't know French. I couldn't speak the language. I wasn't going to school. So I would just spend my days using drugs and doing whatever would help me avoid the unacknowledged pain that I was carrying. My boyfriend was becoming increasingly physically and sexually abusive, and I wrestled with suicidal ideations. I was in a very, very dark place. And then I became pregnant. 15 years old, I decided to terminate my pregnancy. I had no idea what to do. I knew I did not have the capacity to mother a child, and I was terrified. And I felt incredibly selfish. I eventually returned from Montreal, and I sadly entered into another toxic relationship with a man who struggled with alcoholism and drug addiction. This relationship lasted 4 years, and I began using heavier drugs. I was lost and confused and so unsure of who I was. I was free falling, but not even considering where I was going to land. In New Year's of 2005, I made the choice to give myself away to a man for a momentary high. And that year, I was the victim of sexual violence on 2 occasions, and I felt dirty. It was as if I was walking around with this big sign on my chest that just said, "Hurt me." What was wrong with me? Why did I keep doing these things? I felt hopelessly broken. In Romans, in the Bible, in chapter 7, verse 15, it says, "What I do not understand. For I do not do what I want, but I do what I hate." This verse was highlighted with a yellow highlighter in my 7-year-old niece's Bible, open on her nightstand, who I happened to share a room with at the time. And I saw it the morning I returned home after the second sexual violation. And then my mother popped by, and I can't remember if it was that day or the next morning, but within a very short time, she'd popped by, and we sat at the kitchen table as she slid a Lakeside Church bulletin toward me. And down at the bottom corner was this little write-up about a program. And she spoke words to me that day that would forever change my life. She said, "Johanna, have you ever heard about Celebrate Recovery?" And that was 18 years ago. And so I began my journey of recovery and healing and growth. And it's been a process, let me tell you. Over the next couple of years, I attended a 2-month inpatient women's trauma and addiction unit at the Center for Addiction and Mental Health in Toronto. I visited Westover Treatment Facility and did their family program for those that are affected by someone else's addiction. I enrolled and I eventually graduated college as a social service worker, and I turned my life and my will over to Jesus. I was baptized, but this time because I wanted to follow Christ with my whole life. And it was also during these years that I found my home. I found my home here at Lakeside, in particular in the ministry of Celebrate Recovery. My first night at Celebrate Recovery, I got a ride with my brother-in-law and this interesting guy named Nick. Yeah. He's right over there. So I happened to marry Nick not too long after. And just a bit of a disclaimer here that we do not recommend coming to Celebrate Recovery for dating purposes. So this past Friday, Nick and I celebrated 16 years of marriage. Yes. Okay. I never know when I'm going to cry, but it always comes. Nick and I also have 2 absolutely beautiful gifted, precious daughters, Elizabeth and Kate, who are here so they can wave. Hello. Oh. So a couple of weeks ago, I saw this image here posted on Facebook by a friend of mine. Oh, thank you. You are a gift. Oh, I don't know if I can blow my nose with a mic on. How does that work? Oh, I thought you muted me there. I was like, you guys are good. No. Awesome. So I saw this image on Facebook. A friend had posted a couple weeks ago, and she and her husband have been getting some work done in their backyard, and so there were some old trees that had to get uprooted. And when I saw this image, I thought, gosh, that is the perfect image of what it has looked like for me to uproot the lies and the wrong beliefs that have been growing under the soil of my life and identity. In the comment section along with this picture, my friend had written, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into removing the stumps and the root of these old trees. Uprooting and moving forward in my healing and my recovery has required painful honesty. More tears than I can count and that I'm still counting. Learning how to release my anger and my rage in healthy ways at the violence and injustice that I've endured, and learning how to offer forgiveness. I've been challenged to apologize and ask for forgiveness for my mistakes and my failures and the hurt that I've caused. It has been literally with blood, sweat, and tears, and only possible because of the unending, extravagant grace of God and the gentle, tender care of Jesus, that I'm learning to say goodbye to the things that once defined me. I've had to work to uproot the lies I believed and plant new seeds in order to grow new roots. To uproot what was and what is no longer serving me, and to choose with intention to plant and to nurture the truth that I am beloved, that I'm God's beloved child, that I'm cherished, that I'm precious, and that I'm gifted, that I'm worthy, and that I'm forgiven, that I'm a daughter, and that I'm not just any daughter, but that I'm a chosen daughter, and that God calls me Johanna, tender-hearted, and that I'm a grace bearer, and that I've been set free. Lakeside, you are God's beloved child. You are cherished and precious, and you are gifted with particular abilities, with a particular personality and particular strengths. You are forgiven. And you are forgiven no matter what, no matter where you've been and what you've done or what you're doing right now. You're forgiven. And that we are sons and we are daughters, and that we're not just sons and daughters, but that we are chosen. You are chosen. And that God has special things that he wants to say to you. Friends, we have been set free. It says in Galatians 5 that it is for freedom that we have been set free. You see, God never wastes our hurt. He never wastes our hurt. And we say that in CR and Celebrate Recovery all the time. God never wastes a hurt. If we allow him, he can take our weaknesses and our failures and our brokenness, and he turns it into this outpouring that we then get to offer to others. This is what God has done with my life. And this is what God has done in so many other people's lives that I've been witness to. It is truly a miracle and a gift, and sometimes hard for me to believe that I ended up becoming a pastor of Celebrate Recovery. I want to share a fun fact with you. Did you know that almost all water that enters a tree's roots, so almost all the water that a tree absorbs and takes in through its roots, is lost to the atmosphere, that it actually goes outside of itself, and that only 10% of the water remains in the tree to keep the living tree system healthy and maintaining growth? You see, God desires to fill us and transform us by the living water, by Jesus, so that we can then pour ourselves out for others while still maintaining what it is that we need in order to be healthy and alive. And this is where my story ends. It's also where my story continues on. You see, my aim is for the roots of my life to be planted in the soil of God's love, to be watered, sustained, and filled by Him, so that I can be an outpouring to others of the grace and transformation that Jesus really does bring, to offer freedom and hope to others. And friends, there is hope. There is hope. And maybe today, maybe you're in the middle of a struggle. Maybe you are actually literally fighting for your life. I want you to know that we see you. We see you. And that we here at Lakeside, we're here for you, and we want to walk with you. We want to help you uproot what might be in your life. At Lakeside, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not be okay. And often it is recognizing and admitting that we're not okay that is the first step to getting well. I want you to know that any of our pastoral staff would be glad to connect with you. You are welcome to come to Celebrate Recovery. And as Mark said, it's not just for addiction, it's for anyone struggling with anything, with any hurt, hang up, or habit. Last week, Mark spoke about unity and the hope of Lakeside being a community that embodies unity. That hopefully this is us. We also hope that Lakeside would be a place where we can know that it's okay to not be okay, and where we can share our full story, and where God is transforming lives that can become outpourings of hope. Hopefully, this is us. I've shared a lot this morning, at least I feel like I have. And so I'd like to take a moment to just pause. Rachel's gonna come up and she's gonna join me on stage, and she's just gonna play some soft music just to help create a bit more of a reflective space. And if something I shared has come up for you, I just want to encourage you to maybe sit with that, or just take a moment. Just take a moment to be silent, to breathe, to pause, to think. There's a couple of questions up on the screen. I know that can be helpful for some people. So what stood out to you this morning? Or is there something that you're identifying as you heard me speak, something that is in your root system that may need uprooting? So we're just going to pause for a minute, and then I'm going to pray. if something has come up for you today that maybe you specifically want or feel the need to process further, I just want to remind you of what I mentioned already, that any of the pastoral staff here at Lakeside would be happy to connect with you. I would love to have a coffee with you, to share more of my story, because there's more, or to hear your story. I would love that. Celebrate Recoveries tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. Just show up. Don't have to sign up. We also have prayer teams here this morning, if you'd like someone to pray with you. I'd like to close in prayer, to pray together. And I'd like to pray by reading through Ephesians 3. Ephesians 3, verse 17 through to 21. And this was a prayer that is from the Bible that Paul wrote. And he wrote to the church in Ephesus at the time. But it's my prayer. It's my prayer for us as individuals, but also for us as a community and as a collective community. So I'm wondering if you would be so kind, if you're able and willing to stand with me as we read through and pray through Ephesians 3. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power together with all the Lord's holy people to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us. To him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen. Just a reminder, friends, that the crosses are here. Samantha and Jordan are here. They're here to pray for you. They'd love to pray with you. For those of you that are attending our Lakeside 101, it is in the cafe, and you're welcome to just head there. We'll start momentarily. Feel free to grab some food and find a seat and make yourself comfortable. Friends, thank you so much, Lakeside family, for letting me share my story with you all today.